The zipper. So this pattern piece is the center back of a blouse. This is the arm's eye where your facing gets attached. We have a 1/2 inch of seam allowance, 1/2 inch of seam allowance at the side seam and at the hem on this particular sample. So we have 2 inches of seam allowance at the center back where the zipper is going to go. So go ahead and use your 2-inch wide ruler to line up against the edge of your fabric, and then just pull your pattern piece up to that, and you'll know you have 2 inches of space. Trace your pattern piece. Mark your notches. Now, as we need 2 pieces of this pattern, we're going to flip it and repeat the process on the other side. Go ahead and mark out our seam allowance, cut out our pieces, and then we are going to pin them together at the center back. Straight line, so you don't need a lot of pins. Now, the majority of the seam we are going to sew on a basting stitch length because we are going to seam rip it open once we're done sewing our zipper. So there is no back stitching at the beginning of this seam. We are sewing on a 6 stitch length, the basting stitch length. But when we get to the notch near the bottom of the pieces of fabric, you're going to switch to a 3 stitch length, and you are going to backstitch, creating a knot, and finish out the seam, backstitching at the end. Because this last portion of your zipper is going to remain. You will not be seam ripping that part open. So that is why that part of the seam we sew at a 3, and the part where you're going to seam rip open we sew at a 6, just to make it easier. Hit my line on both sides, great. Now we're going to iron that stitching. Finger press open the seam. And now we're going to iron our seam allowance open. So now to make sure that we can see the notch at the bottom of where our zipper is going to end, I'm going to take a pen and just go right where that notch is so I can see it on this side, and then use my pencil to mark where that is. Because otherwise your notch disappears under your seam allowance. And you're going to line up the zipper stop, which is the metal rectangle at the bottom of your zipper, right with the notch. Now the goal is to straddle the seam with the zipper teeth. And we're going to just pin little increments at a time. So I've made sure that the zipper teeth are straddling my seam. My zipper stop is at the notch, and I'll put in my first pin, which is going to go underneath those zipper teeth. So it's a bigger bite than normal. And I'm going to walk my zipper teeth along my seam, making sure that they are still centered, and I'm going to put in a pin about every 1.5 inches. Now the putting in of the pin can move things, so you just always want to check to make sure you're still straddling the seam. And the kind of zipper we are doing is called a butted zipper, because the 2 pieces of fabric are going to butt up against each other, covering the zipper. There are many different ways to put in zippers. This is one of the simplest ways to put in a zipper. Oh, I can tell that it's a little bit off now from when I was pinning it, so I'm just going to repin that section. Now as we get up to the top of the zipper where the zipper pull is, what's important is that the zipper pull is straddling the seam, but it's not flat, so it's going to want to rock on you. So at the top of the zipper, we are going to do parallel pins to the seam line. The way you're going to sew the zipper is you're going to travel down the side, cross over the bottom of the zipper, and then sew up the other side. So the direction of the second parallel pin is going to be opposite from the first, so that you have access to the pin head when you get to that point in the sewing. And you're going to go ahead and pin right through the middle of the zipper tape. Now, they weren't evenly spaced, so that's why I'm going to re-pin the first side, making sure that the zipper tape and my pin are equal distance from the seam on both sides. As you can see, they're now equal. And if I stitch right where those pins are, I'm going to have equal stitching. Now you use a different foot to sew on a zipper. So you will get that from me. I have the different foot for your machine. And you're going to use the screwdriver to remove the presser foot that you're currently using. And what's different about a zipper foot is it allows the needle to get up really close to your stitching. And you can move this foot so that the needle is either on the left or the right of the foot. We are going to move it so that the needle is on the left of the presser foot. You're sewing this on a 3-stitch length, and at the beginning you are going to split the middle of the zipper tape, moving that pin, the parallel pin, very slowly as you sew. And when you get 1.5 inches down on this zipper tape, you are going to slowly taper in so that you're right up against the zipper teeth. So you're making a Y shape. And for the remainder of this side of the zipper, you're going to sew in a straight line right alongside the zipper teeth. And you can feel there's a ledge there. That's how you know you're right alongside the zipper teeth. Take your time. Once again, you're sewing this on a 3-stitch length. And when you get to the zipper stop at the bottom of the zipper, go ahead and hand crank so that you get right where you want to be. You're going to pivot, and then you're going to hand crank across the zipper teeth, because if you go ahead and sew normally, you might break your needle. It's going to be a little difficult to get the presser foot and the feed dogs to move the fabric, so you might have to encourage the fabric to move underneath your presser foot. And so you're just going to hand crank walk across the zipper teeth. Now you're on the other side. You're snugging up against the zipper teeth once again. And you don't have any pins to remove now because you've stitched down the zipper so it's nice and secure. You're going to sew straight until you get to the same distance on the other side that you began your Y. And you are going to gradually move out so that you're sewing in the middle of your zipper tape, removing that parallel pin as you go, making a nice, smooth, gradual Y shape and back stitching at the top. A moment of truth. Looks good on this side. Now on the side that the audience sees, They are closer on one side than the other, which is not ideal, but it is acceptable. Zippers are tough. They will rarely come out perfect. Now for the really fun part. You're going to take your seam ripper and starting just above where the zipper stop is, which is the beginning of your basting stitching, you're going to break that stitch, and then you'll be able to slide your seam ripper all the way up that seam. And then you have exposed your zipper. Woohoo! Look at that. And you're going to pick out all those tiny little annoying threads. Now you have a butted zipper. As you can see, the center back of your garment now has its closure.